Before I tell you what happened at that Christmas dinner table, I need you to picture something. Picture a 9-year-old girl in a green velvet dress, carrying a wooden box across a silent dining room while every adult in the room holds their breath. She doesn't look scared. She doesn't look angry. She walks the long way around the table, past the aunt who said she wasn't real family, past the cousin who got the iPad, past the grandmother who just called her sister's name the real granddaughter, and she sets that box down right in front of the woman who built all of this. And then she lets go. That was my daughter Lily. And what was inside that box? That's what this whole story is about. My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 37 years old, an Air Force JAG officer, and I touched down at Nashville International after a 7-month deployment in Okinawa, Japan 3 weeks before Christmas. The first thing I did when I walked through my front door wasn't hug my husband. It was go straight to the hallway closet, stand on my toes, and press my hand along the top shelf until my fingers found the leather strap of a mahogany box my father had built in his workshop before he died. I knew my mother was going to skip my daughter at Christmas dinner. I'd known it for 8 straight years. What I didn't know, what nobody at that table knew except me, was that my father had spent the last summer of his life with an estate attorney in a small office outside Springfield, Missouri, making sure that Skip was going to cost her everything. My daughter is Lily. She was 9 years old that Christmas. My husband Marcus and I brought her home from foster care when she was 6 months old. From the very first holiday she sat at my mother's table, my mother Dorothy had looked past her like she was furniture. Not family. A situation. Something to be tolerated and then moved past. For 9 years, my whole extended family nodded right along. They passed the casserole. They refilled their glasses. They said absolutely nothing. What they didn't know was that my father Frank, gone 3 years by that Christmas, had left me a key and a set of instructions. He'd told me on the back porch of his lake house exactly when to use them. 41 minutes after we sat down to Christmas dinner, my 9-year-old slid that mahogany box across the table and said the 5 words we had practiced together every night for 3 weeks. Welcome to silent revenge. If you have ever sat at a holiday table and watched someone look straight through a child who deserved to be seen, someone who just chose not to see them, you are going to feel every single beat of this story in your chest. Drop 1 word in the comments describing what that kind of silence does to a kid who grows up inside it. I read all of them. Every one. Stay with me because the ending of this story took 3 years to build and about 41 minutes to deliver. Plane came in low over the Cumberland River on a Friday afternoon, the hills south of Nashville bare and brown in the November cold. I had my duffel, my carry-on, and a manila envelope tucked in the inside pocket of my jacket that I had not opened in 3 years. Marcus was at arrivals with Lily on his back, both of them wearing matching orange beanies she had picked out at Target because she said orange was a bold choice. She slid off his back the second she spotted me and ran across the tile floor in her light-up sneakers. She hit me so hard I took a full step back. I buried my face in her hair. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo she'd been using since she was 4 and exactly like the inside of Marcus's truck. "You're taller," I said. "You got a new haircut," she said into my shoulder. Marcus wrapped his arm around both of us and kissed the top of my head. He took my bag without a word and we walked out into the cold. On the drive south toward our town of Millbrook, Lily reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out something small and silver. My father's old pocket watch, dented, cracked crystal he'd never bothered to fix because he said the crack gave it character. She'd been wearing it on a cord around her neck since his funeral. "I kept him with me," she said, completely matter-of-fact, the way only a child can say something that big without flinching. "I know, baby." Marcus glanced at me in the rear view. We didn't say out loud what we were both already thinking. There was a wall calendar in our kitchen at home with Christmas Eve circled in red marker. 3 weeks out. After Lily went to bed that first night, I walked to the closet. Marcus had moved the mahogany box from our storage unit while I was overseas, exactly like I'd asked. Sat on the top shelf with my father's handwriting on the small brass tag tied to the latch. "For Lily, when the time comes." I ran 2 fingers along the edge of the lid. My dad had built it in his workshop, stained it 3 times with tung oil, fitted a piano hinge on the back. He'd told me that Lily had helped him sand the lid the summer before he died, that she'd sat on his workbench in her little overalls with a square of sandpaper, completely focused, asking him every 30 seconds whether it was smooth enough yet. She didn't know what was inside it. He'd told her it was a gift for someday. 3 weeks until Christmas Eve. I closed the closet door. "You okay?" Marcus said from the hallway. "Yeah," I said. "We're ready." The group text came on a Wednesday morning while I was making Lily's breakfast. It was from my mother, Dorothy. Christmas Eve dinner at my place. Bringing presents for the kids, Emma and Tyler are getting something special. Lily is welcome to come along too, of course. I read it twice. Then a third time. The "of course" sat in the middle of that message like a thumbtack pushed into velvet, just deep enough to leave a mark, not deep enough that anyone could call it intentional. Lily climbed onto the bar stool next to me and read it over my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head against my arm for a moment and went back to her scrambled eggs. Marcus was at the kitchen table sorting through work invoices. He looked up. "What was it?" I turned the phone toward him. He read it, set his pen down, walked to his home office and came back with a thick gray 3-ring binder that he placed on the kitchen counter and opened flat. "Item 49, he said quietly. Marcus had been building that binder since Lily's first birthday. He walked me through all 49 items the first week I was home. Photos with timestamps, printed emails, voicemail transcripts he'd typed out word for word, line by line, because he said if it ever mattered it was going to need to be legible. Page 1, a photo from Lily's first birthday party. My mother standing in the background, in focus, not looking at Lily or Marcus. Gift bag in hand for Emma. Lily's gift had been forgotten. Said it would be confusing to bring separate things, Marcus had written in the margin. Page 11, an email from my sister-in-law Diane to a friend accidentally CC'd to Marcus in 2020. The line that mattered: "Rachel's little project is coming to Christmas again." The rest of the email was about a casserole recipe. Page 19, a voicemail from Aunt Carol, my mother's older sister. "Do we really have to have the foster kid at Thanksgiving? My knees are something awful this year." My mother's response texted back, "Just for the meal, Carol. She won't be underfoot." Dorothy had not corrected the word foster. Lily had been legally adopted for 8.5 years. Page 38, a Christmas card from Dorothy. 2022, addressed to my grandchildren. 3 names inside in red pen. Emma, Tyler, Rachel. No Lily. No Marcus. I closed the binder and put my palm flat on the cover. "He saw all of this," I said. "Dad saw it before we ever said a word to him." Marcus nodded once. That was enough. That Sunday night I tucked Lily in and she had the pocket watch in her hand, the cord wrapped twice around her small wrist. "Mom," she said, "is Grandpa's letter going to be in the box?" I sat on the edge of her bed. I had rehearsed this question a dozen different ways. None of the answers felt right when I was actually looking at her face in the lamplight. "Yes, baby. It's in there. And Grandma's going to have to hear it? One way or another." She thought about that. The lamp threw a warm circle on her quilt, one my father had picked out for her at a craft fair the summer before he got sick, because he said every kid deserved a quilt someone chose on purpose just for them. What if she cries? She might. Are you going to feel bad? I looked at her face. That careful, watchful face she'd carried since she was a toddler. The face of a kid who'd learned very young to read every room before walking into it. "Grandpa made me promise not to feel bad," I said. "He said if I felt bad it meant I'd waited too long." She turned that over. She looked at the watch. "Okay," she said. "I can do my part. Brave isn't not scared, baby." Brave is scared and still walking to the table. Grandpa was scared sometimes too, right? More than he ever let on. She smiled the small, careful smile she'd had since she was a toddler and turned to face the wall. I stood in the doorway a long time before I went downstairs. Now here's the detail I want you to hold on to because it comes back at the end. 3 days before Christmas, Howard Briggs, my father's estate attorney out of Springfield, Missouri, called me. He'd mailed Dorothy a certified letter arriving around December 23rd. It didn't explain the trust. It simply notified her there was an outstanding estate matter requiring her attention after the new year. Routine. Controlled. What Howard also told me, Dorothy's neighbor Bev Tillman, who'd been helping manage the Ozark Lake House as an informal property manager, had quietly contacted his office in November. Bev had found paperwork in the rental lockbox that didn't match the property tax records. She wasn't trying to cause trouble. She just didn't want liabilities she didn't understand. Bev had a paper trail going back 18 months. I didn't know any of that on Christmas Eve. I found it out later. But hold it because it matters before we're done. Are you subscribed yet? 'Cause I need you right here for what's coming. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever kept quiet at a family table when you should have spoken up? 'Cause I was one of those people for a long time, and this story is partly about what happens when you stop. Christmas Eve morning arrived cold and gray, the kind that smells like wood smoke in other people's kitchens. I laid out my dress uniform on the bed, service blues, ribbons, name taped straight. My mother had asked for a uniform photo at every family event since I made captain, and she had never once displayed a single one anywhere in her house. I wore it anyway because my father had always stood a little straighter when he saw me in it, and because today it was going to mean something. Marcus tied his tie in the bathroom mirror. Lily came in wearing a dark green velvet dress, white tights, small black flats, 2 French braids. My father's pocket watch hung outside the dress, on its cord visible. She wanted it visible. "You look like a general," she told me. "You look like someone who knows exactly what she's doing," I told her. Marcus kissed her forehead. He kissed mine. We go in. We eat dinner. We stay level. Lily hands the box when dessert hits the table. We leave when we leave. Copy that. Lily gave us both a completely deadpan salute. She'd grown up hearing military talk at the dinner table and walked downstairs to get her coat. My mother's house sat on Maple Creek Road in Hargrove, Tennessee, a 2-story craftsman in a town so relentlessly picturesque in December it looked like a movie set. White lights on every storefront, wreaths on every door, the creek frozen at the edges and glinting cold in the afternoon light. Dorothy's driveway was already full when Marcus pulled in. Diane's minivan. Greg's truck. Aunt Carol's sedan with the handicap placard she used everywhere regardless of need. And at the curb, a dark blue Buick I placed after a second. I'd explain that car in a moment. In the back seat, Lily had the mahogany box on her lap. Both hands flat on the lid. Chin steady. "We good?" Marcus said. "We're good." My mother met us in the foyer. She hugged Diane first, even though Diane had been there 2 hours already. She kissed Emma's hair. She ruffled Tyler's beanie. She turned to me with her practiced smile, the tight one that lives only in the mouth, never reaches the eyes. "Rachel, you look thin. Is the Air Force not feeding you?" "Hi, Mom." She looked past Lily. Not at her, past her, like you look past something in your peripheral vision that you've decided isn't worth turning toward. "Oh, you brought her." "Of course. Come in, we're already into the cookies." Lily didn't flinch. She'd been here before. She set the mahogany box down by her coat and followed us in. Kitchen smelled like brown sugar and cloves. Emma and Tyler were at the island. Dorothy had set out 3 small plates, Emma, Tyler, Rachel. No plate for Lily. Marcus reached into the cabinet without saying a single word, took down a clean plate, put 2 snickerdoodles on it, and set it next to mine. He nodded at Lily. She climbed onto the stool. I stood in the doorway pretending to study the ornaments on the window shelf. From there, I could hear my mother and Carol by the stove. Carol was saying in the stage whisper she'd used her entire life that had never once been quiet enough. You don't have to go out of your way for Lily. She's not really family, you know that. You always said so yourself. My mother gave a soft little laugh. Carol, honestly, you're quoting me back to myself. Diane walked past with a casserole dish. She heard every word. Kitchen is 12 feet wide. She did not stop walking. She did not say anything. Marcus's jaw set. He moved Lily's plate 2 inches closer to her without looking up. Lily had heard it. I could tell by the small, deliberate set of her jaw, the way she bit into her snickerdoodle at the outer edge first, working her way around the way my father had taught her. She didn't say anything. She didn't look up. We had a plan. We waited. Now let me tell you about the dark blue Buick at the curb. Because its owner was sitting in my mother's living room when we moved from the kitchen to the dining room, and nobody had invited him except my father. 3 years after my father died. His name was Raymond Calloway. My father's younger brother. Uncle Ray. Ray lived in Jonesboro, a couple hours east, and he had not been in the same room as my mother since the day we buried Frank. What I knew, what Ray had told me 6 months after Dad died, was that at a 4th of July cookout in 2021, he had heard my mother tell her bridge club that Lily was a charity situation that Rachel had brought on herself. Ray had walked off that porch, driven home, never came back. Until tonight. Inside the mahogany box, beneath the trust documents and the sealed letter, was a second envelope addressed to Raymond. Open on Christmas Eve if you're willing. Howard Briggs had mailed it to Ray in November. Ray had made his decision and driven 2 hours west in a dark blue Buick on a cold December night. He was sitting in the wingback chair by the fireplace with a glass of water when we came in from the kitchen. My mother's face went the careful blank she wore when she was blindsided but too proud to show it. "Ray," she said, "I didn't know you were coming." "I got a letter," he said simply. He looked at me. I looked at him. He gave one slow nod, the way Frank's side of the family nodded when they'd made up their minds about something and weren't looking for a debate. Then he looked at Lily, and his whole face changed. He smiled the way my father smiled, starting at the corners of his eyes, working outward. The kind you can't manufacture. "You must be Lily," he said. "Your grandpa showed me pictures of you every single time I saw him." Lily blinked. "He talked about me?" "Kid," Ray said, "you were basically all he talked about." Lily looked at her shoes for a moment. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright but she didn't cry. She gave one small, decisive nod, like something had just clicked into place. Marcus caught my eye across the room. "I see it. Stay the course." Dorothy seated Christmas dinner the way she always seated it. Herself at the head. Emma on her right, Tyler on her left. Carol next to Emma. Diane and Greg across from them. Ray quietly pulled his own chair from against the wall and sat himself at the far end next to Marcus without asking for permission or getting any. In the corner of the dining room, my mother had set up the kids' card table. On it, a paper snowman plate and a sippy cup. Not a juice box. A sippy cup. For a 9-year-old. Lily looked at the card table. Then she looked at me. Marcus was already moving. He carried the folding chair across the room, placed it between his seat and mine, took the sippy cup and paper plate to the counter, pulled a real plate from the hutch and held out Lily's chair. "Lily eats with us," he said in the warm, professional tone he used when explaining a building code to someone who didn't want to hear it. "Same as always." Dorothy's lips pressed together. Carol's eyebrows went up. Greg found something very interesting to look at on his salad fork. "Of course," Dorothy said brightly. More room for the biscuits. Diane honey the rolls. Lily sat between Marcus and me. She kept one foot on the mahogany box under her chair the whole time. Ray raised his water glass a fraction of an inch at me from the far end of the table. Just enough. Dinner went exactly the way it always went. Carol retold a snowstorm story from decades ago that got more dramatic every year. Greg asked himself questions about college football and answered them. Diane asked me 3 careful, surface-level questions about Okinawa, none of them about Lily. My mother complimented her own brisket. Lily ate. She was quiet and less spoken to and polite when she was. She kept one foot on the box. After the dishes were cleared and before dessert came out, Dorothy stood up and announced presents. She had wrapped them herself. Silver paper, gold ribbon, the kind of wrapping that says I planned this and I care how it looks. Emma's first. A flat rectangular box. Had air, brand new. Emma made the sound only preteens make. Diane clapped. Dorothy beamed. Tyler next. A square box. Nintendo Switch OLED. He yelled. Emma yelled back. They knocked foreheads celebrating. Dorothy walked to the side table. She picked up a small envelope and crossed the room to Lily with both hands like a small ceremony. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Lily opened it. A drugstore holiday card. Printed snowflake on the front. Dorothy's signature inside. No money. No note. Just a card. Emma glanced up from her iPad. Grandma, where's Lily's tablet? Dorothy said quickly. Emma, we have our way of doing things. But why doesn't she? Emma, eat your cookie. Emma put her iPad face down and did not eat her cookie. Dorothy walked back to the tree. She came back with a small black velvet box. She knelt beside Emma's chair, a theatrical kneel, a ceremony, and opened it. Gold necklace. Thin chain. Pendant with an engraved initial. Antique gold, the warm kind that doesn't come from a department store counter. This was your great-grandmother's, Dorothy said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. The one I've kept safe all these years. For my real granddaughter. The word real dropped onto the tablecloth like a lit match. Emma felt the weight of it even if she was 12 and couldn't name exactly why. She let Dorothy clasp the chain around her neck. She touched the pendant. But her eyes moved to Lily and stayed there. Ray set his fork down at the end of the table. He did not pick it back up. Lily looked at her water glass. She turned it once slowly in her hands. She did not look at the necklace. She looked at the candle in front of her, the flame leaning left, then right, then settling. I felt my father's pocket watch pressing against my collarbone under my uniform. I focused on the warmth of it. I breathed the way they teach you at officer training, long, through the nose, release without making a sound. Dorothy produced one more gift. A white envelope for Tyler. 5 crisp $100 bills from her and Carol together. Tyler said whoa and held them up. Diane smiled big. Carol laughed about Pokemon. The fire crackled through the living room doorway. Carol raised her wine glass without looking at anyone in particular. Family is blood, she said. That's just the truth of it. Always has been. Nobody responded. Greg looked at his beer. Ray looked at the ceiling. Dorothy nodded slowly, like Carol had said something deeply wise. Then Dorothy leaned back in her chair, relaxed, satisfied, the way people lean back when they think the hard part of the evening is behind them, and said, You know what I've been thinking about, Diane? The lake house in the Ozarks. I want to put in a screened porch before next summer. The Airbnb reviews keep mentioning the mosquitoes. Diane perked up. That's a great idea. We could do it Memorial Day weekend. I cleared almost 6,200 in August alone, Dorothy said pleasantly. A screened porch in peak season? Imagine. Marcus's hand found my knee under the table. Teddy. Hold. I need you to understand what was happening in that moment. My mother was sitting at her Christmas table, describing how to improve the rental income on a property she had not legally owned for 3 years. She was planning upgrades to a lake house that belonged to the 9-year-old girl sitting 12 feet away from her. And she had absolutely no idea. Ray looked at me once. His expression wasn't anger. It was grief, the specific grief of watching someone walk towards something they cannot see. I looked at Lily. Lily looked at the mahogany box. The pie was about to come out of the kitchen. I gave her the smallest nod I knew how to give. Right here. This is the moment. Subscribe to Silent Revenge right now if you haven't already, because what this 9-year-old does next is something I will never be done being proud of. And if you've ever wished someone who is gone could still show up for someone they loved, drop a heart in the comments. I see every single one. Lily set her fork down. She wiped the corners of her mouth with her napkin and folded it once, the way Marcus had taught her. She slid down from the folding chair without a sound. She reached under the chair and lifted the mahogany box with both hands. She held it against her chest. The brass tag dangled from the latch. Pocket watch on its cord swung once and settled. She walked. She walked the long way around the table, past Greg, past Diane, past Carol. Her small black flats made a sound on the hardwood floor that somehow seemed louder than it had any right to be. Diane looked up. Her fork stopped in midair. "Lily? Honey, what are you doing?" Lily didn't answer. She walked past Carol, who turned in her chair to watch. She stopped at the head of the table, directly in front of Dorothy, who was still mid-sentence about contractor estimates. Dorothy went quiet. Lily set the mahogany box on the table. She slid it forward with both hands until the front edge touched the rim of Dorothy's plate. She held it there a moment. Then she let go. She put both hands at her sides. She tilted her chin up just slightly, the way we'd practiced. The fire popped in the living room. Candles shifted. Into the complete silence of that dining room, Lily said, in a voice that was small and clear and absolutely steady. "Grandma, the mom told me to give this to you the next time you ignored me." Dorothy stared at the box. Then at Lily. Then at me. Her face moved through 4 different expressions in about 2 seconds. Carol laughed, the reflex laugh she used whenever she didn't know what else to do. Is this some sort of game the kids are playing?" It was not a game. "What is this?" Dorothy said. Her voice had gone very small. Lily said nothing. She had set her line. She stood at attention beside the head of the table, chin up, hands at her sides, eyes steady on the middle distance exactly the way I'd shown her. Emma leaned forward. Tyler set his switch face down for the first time all night. Ray sat forward and rested his forearms on the table. Dorothy looked at the brass tag on the latch. She read it. I watched the recognition cross her face as she placed the handwriting, 38 years of reading the same loops and slants. "For Lily, when the time comes." "Rachel," she said very low. "What is this?" "It's from Dad," I said. "Open it." She put her hand on the latch. Her fingers were trembling. Carol said, "you don't have to." "Carol, be quiet," I said. Carol looked at me the way people look when they've always underestimated someone and just realized the cost of it. She closed her mouth. I held her eyes until she looked away. Dorothy opened the latch. The lid creaked. Tung oil smell came up out of the box, warm, woody, unmistakably my father's workshop. 3 coats of the same oil he'd been using for 30 years. Dorothy inhaled sharply. Inside the box in order were 4 things. A manila folder on top, labeled in my father's handwriting, Callaway Family Trust, irrevocable. Executed May 9, 2022. Under that, a second folder. Beneficiary, Lily Grace Webb. Under that, a sealed cream envelope with a wax seal my father had pressed himself. A brass button from one of his work shirts, melted down in his shop just for this. His handwriting on the front, to be opened by Dorothy in front of family when Lily is ready. And propped against the inside of the lid, a 4x6 photograph. My father, in his green flannel shirt, sitting on the back porch of the Ozark Lake house. Lily was 3 years old. She was in his lap. His head was tipped down toward hers. They were both looking off to the left at something in the grass. A turtle Lily had spotted that afternoon and named Gerald immediately and permanently. They were both grinning like the world had just done something wonderful. Dorothy saw the photograph first. She made a sound. Not a word, a small, involuntary breath like someone had pressed on a bruise she forgot she had. Her hand reached for the photograph and stopped, hovering an inch above it, not quite able to touch. "Frank," she said. Like a question. Like she was asking if it was really him. "Yes," I said. For one moment, just one, her face wasn't defensive and it wasn't controlled. Something raw underneath it, the face of someone recognizing something at too great a distance to reach anymore. Then it closed up again. She picked up the first folder. She opened it. 22 pages. She read page 1. Page 2. She turned to the property listing. Under Trust Assets, Item 1. Lake House and surrounding property, Stone County, Missouri. Parcel number 7722-014-009. Approximately 280 acres on Clearwater Lake. Transferred into trust on date of grantor's death, November 3, 2022. She inhaled sharply. She did not exhale. "This isn't real," she said. "It's real, Mom. It can't be legal." Page 18. Howard Briggs's notarization stamp. Look at the witnesses. His paralegal and Earl Simmons, Dad's shop foreman. She turned to page 18. She looked at the signatures. The date. The stamps. She put her hand over her mouth. "He didn't tell me," she said. "No, he didn't." She turned more pages. She found the deed transfer. She found the beneficiary line. Lily Grace Webb. Trustee, Rachel Carter Webb until beneficiary's 25th birthday. She turned one more page. Trust accounting. Total value at last audit, $64,300. Savings bonds. Workshop proceeds. And a parcel of land on a Missouri lake that my mother had been renting to strangers. "You knew this whole time," she said. "Yes." "You knew when I was renting it." "Yes, Mom." She couldn't finish the sentence. You let me take money from." "I let you choose," I said. "Every month was a choice you made." She set down the folder. She picked up the cream envelope. She read the front aloud in a flat voice. "To be opened by Dorothy in front of family, when Lily is ready." Carol said softly, "You don't have to." Dorothy looked at her sister. Then at the envelope. She broke the wax seal. She unfolded the letter. 2 pages, front and back, in my father's handwriting. She read silently. Her lips moved slightly. Her eyes moved down the page. Color left her face in stages, like someone was slowly turning down a dial. She folded it. Put it back. Set it on the table. "I can't read this aloud," she said. "Read it, Mom." "Rachel, please." He wrote it to be read out loud. In front of everyone. That was his instruction. Dorothy was crying now. Not the big, visible crying she produced at funerals, the kind that always required a second glass of water and a fresh box of tissues and a small audience. This was something else. Quiet. Narrow. Ashamed. She put her hand over her eyes. I stood up. I walked around the table to her shoulder. I took the envelope gently from her hand. I unfolded the letter. My father's handwriting. The slanted T. The looped G. The way he always pressed a little harder on the first letter of every sentence because he'd taught himself to write as a kid and he always started strong. I read it in my jag voice. Even. Measured. 1 sentence per breath. Dorothy. I am writing this in April of 2022, 2 months after the doctor told me my heart is failing. I have not told you because you would make it about you. So I am writing this down instead. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum in the kitchen. I have known for 35 years that you measure people by the wrong ruler. You measure them by bloodline, by last name, by whether they match the family photograph on the wall. You do not measure them by how they love or how they show up or what they do when nobody is watching. I have forgiven you many things in 40 years of marriage. I forgave you for the way you talked about Rachel when she chose to serve. I forgave you for what you said about my brother Ray at Christmas of 2018. I forgave you for the way you spoke about my mother when she needed care and you found it inconvenient. I paused. I heard Carol exhale. I kept reading. I cannot forgive you for our granddaughter Lily. I kept my voice even. I delivered harder things in worse rooms. From the day Marcus and Rachel carried her into our house, you decided she was not yours. I watched you decide it. You were at the kitchen sink with your back to me, and I heard every word. You said she wasn't really family. I have never forgotten it. I have never forgotten one single thing you said about that little girl. You skipped her at her first birthday. You left her name off Christmas cards. You told Doreen Massey at a Labor Day cookout in 2021 that you were, and I am quoting your exact word, tolerating her. I was on the other side of the back fence. I heard you through the slats. Greg lowered his head. He looked at the table. He did not look up again. You handed her an empty card while her cousin opened a $1,000 tablet. You introduced her at your church as Rachel's foster situation. She has not been in foster care for 8.5 years. She is my granddaughter. You chose not to see that. I am writing this because I do not believe you are going to change on your own. I spent 2 years hoping I was wrong. I have come to understand that I was right. So I have done what I should have done in 2018. I have placed the lake house into a trust for Lily. I have placed my savings bonds into the trust for Lily. I have placed the proceeds from my workshop tools into the trust for Lily. Howard Briggs made the trust irrevocable. There is nothing in it for you to challenge. I turned the page. The room had not moved. She is my granddaughter in every sense that matters. She helped me sand the lid of the box that is sitting in front of you right now. She did not know what was going inside it. She thought she was just working on something with her grandpa. If you are reading this letter, you have failed her again on a day that should have mattered. So now she has something you cannot take from her. And it is not the property you have been planning to improve and rent out for years. Pay the trust back. Sign the audit paperwork. Look at this child. Frank. I folded the letter. I set it gently on the table beside the mahogany box. Top right here with me. That is my father's voice. 3 years after we buried him in his green flannel shirt because that's what he would have wanted. I have stood in front of court-martial proceedings. I have delivered career-ending findings to senior officers. I have never been in a harder room in my life than my mother's dining table reading those words out loud. If you have ever wished the right person was still alive to say the thing that needed to be said, leave a heart in the comments. I see every single one. And share this story with someone who needs to hear it tonight because somebody in your feed is sitting at a table like this one right now and they need to know they are not alone. Dorothy did not speak for a long time. Her hand was still over her eyes. The room was completely still except for the fire. Carol spoke first because Carol always spoke first when she was frightened. Duh, he didn't mean. He meant every word, I said. He told me on the back porch what he was going to write before he sat down to write it. Every word. Ray stood up from the end of the table. He walked up and stood beside me, not saying anything, just standing there. Present. The last Calloway man in the room, standing next to what his brother had built. Dorothy lowered her hand from her face. She opened the trust folder to the audit clause. She read it once. She read it again. The audit clause required me, as trustee, to recover all income generated from trust property since the transfer date of November 3, 2022. The lake house had been rented starting the following spring. Based on records Marcus and I had gathered, plus the paper trail Bev Tillman had handed to Howard Briggs, rental income over 18 months came to approximately $78,000. At 7% interest written into the clause, the recovery number was just under $89,000. She closed the folder. She stood up so fast her chair scraped back and hit the wall. Her wine glass was in her hand. She didn't realize her grip had tightened until everyone heard the small, dry crack. A thin line of red ran down her wrist. She didn't look at it. He gave her, she stopped. She looked at Lily. Then the sound came. I had been braced for crying. I had not been braced for this. A single sharp exhalation that wasn't a word and wasn't quite a scream, but landed somewhere between the two. The sound of someone understanding all at once the full cost of something they had believed was free. He gave her the lake house, she said louder. He gave the lake house too? She didn't finish. Carol was on her feet, hands fluttering. It's okay. We'll get a lawyer. There has to be some way to... Carol reached for her arm. She's not even, she stopped. Reconsidered. And said it anyway. She's not really family. You said so yourself. We all know it. Blood is. The sentence sat in the room for 2 full seconds. Then Dorothy turned slowly and looked at her sister. Carol. Dorothy's voice was something I had never heard from her in 51 years of being her daughter. Flat. Emptied out. Shut up. Carol's mouth stayed open. No words came. I said be quiet. Dorothy put both palms flat on the table. She leaned into them. You have been saying that my entire life, and I have let you. Don't say it again. Carol sat down. She did not speak again for the rest of the night. Emma had both hands over her mouth. Tyler had finally put down everything he was holding and was just watching. Greg looked like a man who had been attending the wrong dinner for 10 years and had only now figured out what story he was actually inside. Diane sat very still. She looked at Emma. Then she looked at Lily. Really looked, the way you look at something you've been walking past for years without seeing. Lily looked back. Diane's face crumpled at the corners just briefly. Her mouth moved without sound. She looked down at her plate. She didn't say anything. But she saw. And she saw her 12-year-old daughter watching her see it. I waited until the room was as quiet as it was going to get. Then I stood the way I'd been trained, both feet planted, taking up the space I was entitled to take. Mom, I said. Dorothy looked at me. Her eyes were raw. The Calloway Family Trust is irrevocable. Executed by Dad on May 9, 2022, with Howard Briggs of Briggs & Associates in Springfield, Missouri. Witnessed by Howard's paralegal and by Earl Simmons, Dad's shop foreman for 11 years. The sole beneficiary is Lily Grace Webb. I'm the trustee until she turns 25. Trust property includes the Lake House, Stone County Parcel 7722-014-009, 280 acres on Clearwater Lake. $64,000 in savings bonds. Workshop proceeds at Heritage Savings Bank. The Lake House transferred to trust ownership on Dad's death date, November 3, 2022. From that date forward, you did not own it. You had no legal authority to rent it. You had no legal authority to keep a single dollar. Dorothy made a small sound. The audit clause requires recovery of all rental income plus 7% interest. Based on records, including documentation from Bev Tillman, who has already cooperated with Howard's office, the recovery number is $88,400. Audit begins January 10th. Certified notice arrives next week. Dorothy's eyes came up. Bev, she said. Just the word. Bev found paperwork that didn't match and did the right thing. You watched me, she stopped. You watched me rent it for a year and a half. You let me sit at this table tonight and talk about screened porches. I let you choose, I said. Every month was a choice. Every Christmas was a choice. Every empty card and every real granddaughter and every time you nodded while Carol said what Carol said, all of it was a choice you made while the clock ran. That is cruel, she said. Rachel, that is cruel. Mom, that's January 10th. That's paperwork. What was cruel was what it was built to answer. She covered her face again. Ray stood beside me. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. I looked at Lily. She was still standing at attention beside Dorothy's chair. Hadn't moved through the letter, the scream, or the audit. She looked at her grandmother the way a child looks at something complicated she is trying very hard and very honestly to understand. Not satisfaction. Something older and quieter than satisfaction. I walked to her. I knelt down. I smoothed the end of her braid. Come sit with me, Lily Bird. She walked back around the table and sat between Marcus and me. Marcus put his arm around her. She put her hand over his. I stood. Mom, lake house cleared, keys returned by June 1st, audit January 10th. Trust is asking for the money back. I'm just the one delivering the message. She did not look at me. Carol, don't call. Not at Easter, not at anyone's birthday, not for any reason. Don't write, don't show up. Carol nodded into her napkin. Diane, when Emma decides on her own she wants to reach out to Lily, that's between them. You know where we are. Diane nodded once, still not looking up. Greg. He met my eyes. He nodded. He knew the difference between being the problem and being the person who let the problem run, and he didn't argue either one. Then Ray crouched down to Lily's level. Your grandpa left you a small note inside the envelope with his name on it, he said quietly. Yours whenever you're ready. What does it say? Ray smiled my father's exact smile, the one that starts at the eyes and has nowhere else it needs to go. That he's proud of you. And that he'd like you to look after the dock. Lily considered that seriously. You can come to the lake, she said. But you have to bring a fishing pole. Already planned on it, kid. Marcus helped Lily into her coat. I picked up the mahogany box. The small brass bell on the front door rang as Marcus opened it. Cold December air came in, wood smoke and frozen ground and something clean underneath all of it. We walked out into the snow. Truck started slow. Marcus let it idle. Lily sat in the back seat with the mahogany box on her lap, both hands flat on the lid, looking up through the moonroof at the winter sky. Marcus pulled out of the driveway. My mother's porch light fell away behind us. The brass bell rang once in the wind, very faintly. Not one of us looked back. After about 10 minutes, Lily said, Mom, do you think Grandma will call? Probably not, baby. Okay. A pause. Is that sad? It's the truth, I said. Sometimes the truth is sad. Doesn't mean it was wrong. She turned that over quietly for a mile or two. I want to fix the dock, she said. At the lake. Marcus smiled in the rear view. Already on it. Can I bring my friend Jada? I laughed, bigger than I expected, the kind that has some crying right next door to it. I wiped my eyes. Yes, baby. You can bring whoever you want. It's your lake house. She thought about that. It's our lake house, she said quietly. Yes, sweetheart. It's ours. She put her cheek against the mahogany box and closed her eyes. By the time we hit the state highway, she was asleep, one hand still flat on the lid, my father's pocket watch rising and falling with every breath. Marcus reached across the console and took my hand. We drove the rest of the way home without saying a word. March came in cold with 2 back-to-back snowstorms. The audit settled by mid-month. Dorothy paid the trust $88,400. The wire came through on a Tuesday morning. Howard Briggs called from Springfield to confirm. He sounded like a man glad to close a chapter. "Your father was a thorough man," he said. "That is about the finest thing you can say about somebody." Dorothy did not come to Lily's spring school play. I did not invite her. Lily sang a solo in the second act and Marcus sat front row with his phone, and I flew back from a Pentagon assignment early just to be in that seat. We took her for waffles afterward and she ate 3 of them without stopping. Diane sent me an email in February. Subject line blank. 1 sentence. I should have said something a long time ago. I'm sorry. 6 weeks later I replied, "Thank you, Diane." That was enough for now. Emma sent Lily a handmade birthday card in April. Watercolors. 2 girls on a dock with fishing poles. Inside, "Happy birthday. I miss you. Hope I can see you at the lake someday. Love, Emma." Lily wrote her back. Short, kind, no weight in it that didn't belong there. She signed it with her name and a small drawing of Gerald the turtle. Aunt Carol went quiet and stayed that way. Greg texted me in April. He and Diane had started therapy together and separately. He thanked me for Christmas. I told him to thank Lily. The mahogany box lives on our mantelpiece now. Tongue oil finish has darkened just slightly with age. My father's pocket watch rests on top of it, chain coiled the way Lily likes it, cracked crystal facing up. Lily is 9.5. The lake house opens in May. She's invited Jada, Emma if Diane says yes, and Ray, who has confirmed the fishing pole, a sleeping bag, and his famous chili recipe. Marcus is rebuilding the dock on weekends, sending me photos from Missouri while I finish up at the Pentagon. I made Lieutenant Colonel selection last month. We are keeping the house in Millbrook. Lily wants to keep the house in Millbrook. My father taught me something I couldn't have learned from him while he was still standing in front of me. I had to find it in the bottom of a mahogany box he built with his granddaughter's small hands helping to sand the lid. Family is not a line you draw in the dirt with blood. It is a chair you pull out from the table and set down, deliberately without waiting to be asked, every single time. Even when the people around you are pretending the chair isn't there. Especially when the people around you are pretending the chair isn't there. That's my story. A mahogany box. A father who saw clearly when everyone else looked away. An uncle who drove 2 hours on a cold night because a letter asked him to. And a 9-year-old who walked the long way around the table and kept her chin up the entire time. If this story hit you somewhere deep, if it reminded you of a table you've sat at, a child you've watched get looked past, or a person you miss who would have known exactly what to say, please share this right now. Not tomorrow. Right now. Somebody in your life needs to hear this tonight. Hit the like button if my dad deserved better than to be forgotten. Leave a comment telling me, who in your life has ever been that mahogany box for you, the person who prepared something in the background so that when the moment came you weren't alone? Subscribe to Silent Revenge so you don't miss what comes next. I read every comment. I see every heart. And if you've been sitting on something hard, waiting for your moment, I hope this story reminded you that sometimes the waiting is exactly the point. I'll see you in the next one.